Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Adriana Black, and I am the Director of Health Affairs, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at UIC, and also the founding director of the Odehmenan Health Equity Center. Today is a special day. We're launching our official event, our first official event in the OdehCenter with our Odehmenan Health Equity Speaker Series. It is my distinct privilege and honor to welcome today's speaker. Dr. Tristesse Burton is a West Side Chicago native with a Bachelor of Science from UIUC in Crop Sciences and a Master of Science in Law from Northwestern University, Pritzker School of Law, and a PhD from UIC in pharmacognosy. Am I saying that right? Pharmacognosy. Previously, she was a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and at UIC in the College of Medicine with the T32 Premier Program. She has over 10 years of interdisciplinary and collaborative research experience, including working within the fields of phytochemistry, pharmacognosy, anthropology, nutrition sciences, and health equity research that collaborates with Black and Indigenous communities. Dr. Burton has received over 17 awards, fellowships, and grants, including 2 NIH awards and a Ford Foundation postdoctoral fellowship, and was previously an Illinois Board of Higher Education Diversifying Higher Education Faculty Fellow. She has presented her research at over 22 conferences and co-authored 10 papers and 2 book chapters. She previously served as faculty instructor for the UIC Urban Health Program's Research Training and Career Development Program. She was also a previous board member for Expanding Your Horizons, an organization to increase exposure to STEM careers for girls in 2018, and served on the organizing committee from 2013 to 2017. She is currently a Bridge to Faculty and Building Interdisciplinary Research Career in Women's Health postdoctoral fellow. She is a first-generation college and graduate student, a wife, and a mother to an energetic 5-year-old. Her passions are increasing minority representation in STEM careers and higher education, and eliminating perinatal health disparities that affect BIPOC women. So without further ado, Dr. Tristesse Burton, thank you so much.
Thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Adriana, for having me today. Is my volume okay right now? Okay, good. I also would like to thank the OdehCenter, the Office of Vice Chancellor for Health Affairs, and the Office for the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Engagement. It is my pleasure to present to you today on this topic of my journey in academia, where I'm situating myself as an independent researcher that focuses on plants, people, and culture, women's health issues with and for BIPOC women. Just to let you know, this center is a dream of mine. The OdehCenter is everything that I imagined and more. I really wanted this center when I was in graduate school, and I'm so glad that the university has it. The unique thing about this center is that it situates people, not the research, not the money, not the dollars, or maybe, but what I see is it situates people at the heart of it to ensure health equity. And so I'm truly honored to be the first speaker in this center. I'm looking forward to the conversations and the connections that I'll make from working with the center and just utilizing this space. Now, before I begin, I would also like to make this disclaimer that when I'm referencing Indigenous Americans, American Indians, Indigenous people, or Native Americans, I am speaking of Indigenous people who reside in the lower 48 states. So in the spirit of healing, I acknowledge and honor the original peoples of the Chicagoland area, which UIC is situated, the Three Fires Confederacy, Potawatomi, Ottawa, and Ojibwe nations, as well as over 150 tribal nations that know this area, including the Menominee, Ho-Chunk, Miami, Peoria, and Sac and Fox. Chicago is home to one of the largest urban Indigenous communities in the United States, primarily due to policies such as the 1954 Tribal Termination Act, and the 1956 Relocation Adult Vocation Training Act. Native people are still here and will forever be in the Chicagoland area. As the University of Illinois and the university system and most land-grant institutions occupy and benefit from the theft of Indigenous land based on the Moral Land Act of 1862, we have a responsibility to Indigenous communities in the United States. As a Black woman with American Indian ancestry, I commit to creating inclusive environments for Native and Indigenous people in my teaching, mentoring, and scholarship, and my work will continue to build trust and reciprocity with tribal communities. I also want to provide a labor acknowledgement for my Black ancestors who were enslaved and forced to get on this land, yet once here, sacrificed and toiled on this land to build the foundation of this nation and its vast, unequitable wealth. I acknowledge those that have come before me, who ascended and who are here now as a people. As a scholar, I am my ancestors' wildest dream, and I take my responsibility to uplift, motivate, share my story, provide opportunities, and be steadfast in this journey to empower BIPOC people, especially in academia. If you want to learn more about Indigenous land acknowledgements, the QR code is here on the screen. So I don't have any disclosures. And here is an overview of my talk today. I will start with my dissertation project that utilized a mixed methods approach to go from laboratory science to community engaged research, honing in on working with plants, understanding the story behind these plants by working with the people with rich history and the culture of these plants. Next, I'll discuss some of the lessons I've learned from performing this research and gaps in the literature to highlight areas that need more attention from researchers and clinicians. Lastly, I'll discuss how I'm using some of the valuable insight I gained through my training as a PhD student in pharmacognosy and my experiences in the College of Pharmacy while working with urban Indigenous communities to develop a plant-based intervention with and for Black women and eventually urban Indigenous women. At the end of this talk, I'll be happy to take any questions and have a discussion on this work or other things that we want to talk about. So to give you a little bit of background on women's health issues, women may deal with health issues that may be gender specific, such as premenstrual syndrome, pregnancy, which some people, and I don't like to call it a health issue, it's a natural process, right? And menopause, which is another term that people may think of as a natural process. But in some cases, these issues or these natural processes are regulated by hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers that carry information and instructions from one group of cells to another and are responsible for regulating several physiological systems, including the immune, cardiovascular, respiratory, digestive, and cerebral systems. Hormones also regulate growth, development, tissue function, reproduction, metabolism, and sexual function. For women, hormonal balance of the two steroidal sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are important in maintaining good health and preventing disease. Other two steroidal sex hormones, estrogen is primarily discussed in maintaining a healthy hormonal balance for women's health. And then at the bottom, you see the three most common estrogen hormones, estrone, estradiol, and estrol, which are typically called E1, E2, and E3. So I'm switching this over to menopause because this is what my dissertation work was on. So typically during menopause, women may experience the physiological changes due to low levels of estrogen. And some of these changes include affecting the central nervous system, bone health, and changes in the genital urinary system, which can be displayed as several symptoms, such as vasomotor symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal atrophy, and mood swings. To treat these symptoms, pharmaceutical treatment include Prempro, which is an estrogen plus progestin pill, which are effective in reducing hot flashes, insomnia, and hip fractures. However, after 2002, the usage of hormone therapy declined due to the results from the Women's Health Initiative study. In this study, women over over 16,000 healthy postmenopausal women aged 50 to 79 years old examined. What they did is that they examined placebo versus perimenopausal. This study was planned for 8 years. However, it stopped after 5.2 years due to adverse health outcomes, including a 26% increase in breast cancer, a 29% increase in heart attacks, a 41% increase in stroke, and a 22% increase in total cardiovascular disease. So as a graduate student, we wanted to look at what were some of the alternatives that can be used for women during menopause. And I trained under the UIC-NIH Botanical Center, where their primary interests were in studying alternatives to hormone therapy and chemopreventive agents in response to the 2002 Women's Health Initiative results that showed that hormone therapy can cause an increased risk for breast cancer, among other adverse outcomes. Now, one of the goals for this center was to test botanicals alternatives that can alleviate menopausal symptoms by targeting the estrogen receptor, and to examine the same sex-specific pathways to identify chemopreventive plants that could possibly be useful for breast cancer. I personally became interested in indigenous plants that are native to North America because I noticed that most of the common plants used for issues such as menopause were traditionally used by indigenous populations, such as, I don't know if I have a pointer. Let's see. Black cohosh, let me point to the right picture. Can y'all see that? Black cohosh, wild yam, and, oh, this is hops, I'm sorry, and red clover. And as an ethnobotany student, I, with some American Indian ancestry, I wanted to learn more about the plants that were historically used by American Indians. And after digging deeper into the literature, I learned that there were still numerous plants that have not been, talked about, have not talked with community members on the impact of these plants. And so I wanted to tell the story of these plants through my research. So my dissertation project was titled Pharmacognosy and Medical Ethnobotany Research with Urban Indigenous Women. It had 2 arms to this study. The first arm was going from the bench work to community work. It was 2 aims. The first was the Pharmacognosy project. And in this aim, I wanted to identify estrogenic extracts and compounds that can be used as alternatives for hormone therapy or chemopreventive agents among local, traditionally used American Indian plant species. So anybody know what pharmacognosy means before I keep saying that word? Okay, right. So pharmacognosy, we used to have a department here in the College of Pharmacy called pharmacognosy. And my definition of pharmacognosy is to know and understand plants by developing we're developing medicinal agents from these plants or natural products. And so that's what the term pharmacognosy is. So when I'm using that term, I'm talking about how can we develop anything medicinally or highlight the medicinal properties within these plants or natural products to help with any health issue. All right, got that terminology down. I'm also be using another term called ethnobotany. And so let me just go ahead and define that. Ethnobotany, anybody know what that means? And anybody in the chat? I see some things in the chat. Okay, am I too low in volume? Okay. Yay. So ethnobotany, anybody want to raise their hand, give it a shot? All right, usually I'm way more engaging, so. But ethnobotany is the study of people, culture, and plants. So how people use plants, whether it's for food, traditional practices, medicines, et cetera. And I primarily hone on how are they used for medicinal purposes. And so the second aim was an ethnobotany focus, where the goals were to perform a medical ethnobotany survey to identify the current uses of the tested plants, and also to understand urban American Indian women perception and experience about menopause. All right. So I'm going to start with the bench work. The bench work basically started off with a huge list of plants. I was given a list of plants. We had a memorandum of agreement established in 2005 with the Chicago Botanical Garden, who sourced a lot of plants to UIC and the Botanical Center. And my task was to figure out which ones to explore. I had over 400 samples with 164 different plant species. So how did I do that? This is the 15 that I started with, or the 15 that I settled on. But I did that by doing a literature search. There's a really great Native American ethnobotany database with an anthropologist, Dr. Daniel Mormon, who worked to identify medicinal properties or highlight medicinal properties of plants that have traditional uses by Indigenous people of America. And he had made this book, and then the book became a database. So I used that as one of my primary resources. I've used UIC. They may still have this database. It's called NAP Alert, which pulls together information about plants' chemical properties and medicinal properties and biological activity. I use that database as well to try to help me figure out which ones I can target for my dissertation work. Now, I identified 15 plants. These are all the 15 babies that I started to work with. Now, when I'm working with them, they don't look this pretty. These are all the flowers. I have just like a powder form. And so what I did was I selected these plants because of their uses and their potential activity, and then I performed an extraction. So anybody make a tea before? You're doing an extraction. You're extracting out the components of the tea bag to drink. And so that's what I did. And I did it with methanol, which is like an alcohol. And I did it for all 15 of these plants. And out of the 15, 3 demonstrated significant activity. I thought I had some red boxes, but they're not showing up, but I can point to them. These 3 plants were lead plant here, which is one of the plants that we're going to talk about a lot today, cup plant, and round-head Lespedeza. If y'all see it before I do, y'all holler. There it is, round-head Lespedeza. And so these plants are lead plant, which was previously used by the Omaha tribe as an anti-rheumatic, Silphium porphyriolum, or cup plant, which was used as an abortifacient by the Chippewa and Meskwaki tribe, and Lespedeza capitata. Lespedeza capitata, roundhead Lespedeza, was used by the Omaha and Ponca tribes as an anti-rheumatic. So to give you an example, I did a lot of assays in the lab on the bench with cells to try to understand if they have activity. And so to give you an example of one of these assays I used, one of them was called the Ishikawa assay. And this was used to determine estrogenicity. So whether a plant was anti-estrogenic or estrogenic. And so as you can see in the table, lead plant here had significant estrogenic activity. However, it was slightly toxic. And we know that it was slightly toxic when we look at our negative control 4-H tamoxifen, and we have similar values, not our negative control, but the data is not showing here. The toxicity is right to the left where it's a 49 and was slightly toxic. And also, roundhead Lespedeza also shows some estrogenic activity, as we see as our comparator, which is estradiol. So I decided to focus on Amorphokinesis or lead plant due to its potential activity. And I wanted to see if I can get rid of some of that toxicity within the plant. And I was able to successfully do that by focusing on a chloroform partition. So I did this process called bioassay guided fractionation. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but pretty much you have, let's say we have a tea. And we know that we can extract with water, or we can extract with alcohol, or we can extract with oil. So I did all these different extractions, and I tested it after each extraction. And I figure out the compounds will separate out to all these different properties and like. So oil-like compounds will like the oil mixture. Water-like compounds will like the water. Alcohol-like compounds will like that. And so what I did, I was able to separate out the compounds that were toxic versus the compounds that seem to be active. And I continue to do that. So continue to do these testing out with different testing out with different solvents, and then going back to see the activity. And so that's like bioacid guided fractionation. And what I found was that I ran out of material during that process. So I had to recollect. And fortunately, I found out about a great nursery by DeKalb, Illinois, that grew wild prairie plants. I was able to go and collect that, as you can see in this picture at the bottom to the left. I had seeds, so I was able to plant it in our Atkins garden. I'm sure all of you get the tour, and my plant is still thriving. And so what you do is that you can't just say, oh, this is the same plant, let's continue to test. You have to verify the compounds within there, because plants, like people, they have different expression of things at different moments. And that's due to weather, pest, growth season, et cetera. And so I had to verify that the ones that I collected were pretty similar to the original batch that I already had. And I did that by doing taxonomic verification, so looking at the structure within the plant. I also looked at the chemical compounds, and it was pretty similar. And also, I'm very proud to say that when I collected the plant, now I have a herbarium voucher, which is like a library of plants at the Field Museum now. So I'm excited about that. And then I just continue to work through the isolation process. And to the right, it shows the extraction process. I also worked with a team in my mentor's lab, and we did MagMass, which is a magnetic microbead affinity assay. And we helped to develop this assay to quickly isolate compounds. And so basically, let's say you have an estrogen receptor, which is what I was looking for. Can it bind to the estrogen receptor? It may not have activity, but can it bind to the estrogen receptor? I did that, incubated with the incubated extract or fraction with the estrogen receptor, used a magnet to pull down that receptor because that receptor was attached to a magnet, washed out everything that wasn't attached, and then used the magnet and drew out the things that bound to the receptor. And I was able to find 2 new compounds, one called xanthocerin A that was known, but it wasn't known for that plant, and another one, xanthocerin J, that I named after my daughter. It was a brand new compound, and I'm hoping that we can continue this work within the college and the department. And this research is published in Phytochemistry Letters. So doing all of that, I was still I have to understand these plants and the story of these plants. And so the second part of the dissertation was doing the ethnobotany work, which took a lot of labor and love. Labor meaning that, of course, all of you know, you just can't go to people and ask them questions, right? It takes time to build relationships, to build trust, to build understanding, to build motivation. And it took me 2 years to actually get acclimated and feel trusting enough to ask my questions. I volunteered at the American Indian Center, did work with their programming for their summer kids program. But my main volunteer responsibilities, which I loved, was working in the kitchen for the elders' lunch. And I love to hear the stories. I love to be in the kitchen, just meet the people that were there. And so it took me 2 years to formulate, and also with the help of the Native American Support Program here on campus, to formulate relationships so that I can be able to ask questions. And so the study design that I decided to do was focus groups to ask women about their menopausal experience, what they know, and if they had used any of the plants that I did research on. Yes, Adriana.
Yes, just a quick thing. Keeping an eye on the chat, and want to say that you're getting kudos for discovering a new compound. So I just wanted to make sure that I communicate to the rest of the audience in here. Thank you, Dr. Handler, for your chat.
Thank you all. I need to make a poster of it, or at least put it in my daughter's room to let her know I named it after her, right? But thank you. I really do appreciate that. And I'm hoping we can continue that work to understand these 2 compounds as well. But just to tell you how I did the community engaged research, like I said, I was active in the community for 2 years. I enlisted stakeholders and key players. So one of those stakeholders and key players was Cindy Soto, when she was the Native American Support Program Director, also Cindy Starr. I met some phenomenal women who just wanted to talk, not even about menopause, which I was fine with because I respect my elders and also I respect listening to these stories. And then I work with community members who helped me to recruit participants, and they also facilitated some of the data collection and data interpretation. Still working with some collaborators here, and my goal is to publish this work probably within the next year so that we can show that, not just me publishing it, but with community members to say that this is the voice. This is, it's been verified with community members that this is the outcomes of this research. So the study design, like I said, was focus groups. I used a modified rapid ethnographic assessment, audio recorded the focus groups, and I had like a general guide that asked questions about, when you hear the word menopause, what do you think? And the data showed us that we had 32 American Indian women out of 3 focus groups to attend. So I thought that was a pretty good thing. The focus groups were held at the American Indian Center, Secretary Center of Chicago. And from doing the work, they were like, you got to come to this other place in Wisconsin. So I was able to go to the Wise Women Gathering Place in Green Bay. From that work, I talked to a diverse group of people from 17 different tribes. They all talked about their menopausal experience around the age of 47, but I had people there from like their early 40s to their 80s. So it was a really good conversation, a lot of laughter. 62% of them were postmenopausal. However, all the participants did have some experience with menopausal symptoms, and 5 women said that they experienced medical treatment for their menopausal symptoms. Now, when we think about urban Indigenous people, some people don't know that they still go home to their home tribe. And so out of the women that participated in the survey, majority of them went to their home tribal land at least once a year. Some of them went less than a year. Some of them were even permanent residents. A lot of women that were in Green Bay were permanent residents, and a slight few never been to their home reservation. So the primary symptoms that women experienced were hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, night sweats, and weight gain. And most women interviewed did not treat their symptoms, but let them pass naturally. And I think that's a cultural thing, and we're going to talk to you about that a little bit later. So when I asked about medicinal plants, the leading answer was, I don't know about any. And I was like, oh, but going through the research and going through the literature and understanding tribal history here in America, how that knowledge was lost, stripped, their identities were stripped, brought me a piece of joy to be able to go back and say that the plants that I worked on, you could take this back because it's your knowledge, it's not mine. You could take this back and implement it in a way that you see fit for your community. So the plants that came up, though, for some of the women just said that I do use plants. One of the women said that they use red raspberry. They know of red raspberry. They know of black cohosh, which is a popular one. They know of ginkgo. They know of black ash. They know of taking some tea or St. John's wort for having lavender, and they used it for these purposes, or they heard about using it for these purposes. And in the focus group, so I had like this biodemographic sheet and they filled it out, but also asked in a focus group as well. And, sage came up, which is one of the well-known medicinal plants that are usually a part of the medicinal wheel for some tribes. Cedar, red raspberry, black cohosh. So all of these plants they talked about, but they, didn't know that they could be used or possibly have potential in the menopausal world. So let's talk about the perceptions. I'll read a quote. One of my favorite quotes is at the bottom to the right. It says your circle is almost completed, and that you should be happy that you are able to complete this many cycles in your life: your baby, your youth, your teen, your adult, and then finally your senior or elder period. So after she kind of talked with us and explained it like that, for me, just starting to go into it. So this was one participant who talked about someone who explained to her what it meant to become really an elder, but also to have this stage of your life and experience menopause. Some women felt like, I'm getting old. Like, I was happy, no more periods. Never really thought about it, or I can't have children anymore. So it was like, yes. And so it was like, no to that. So it was some positive, negative, and indifferent emotions around just a woman becoming into this menopausal phase. So some women thought about it as a natural process, both positive and negative. The one thing that I've noticed is that they didn't talk about it. Like, I remember one participant telling me, like, now I understand why my mom went crazy, like literally crazy around a specific time. She was going through menopause and she had so much rage, and I just didn't understand. And a lot of women also wanted to talk about it even more because, like I said, I had a wide range of participants. Some were in their early 40s and others was in their 80s. And it was like, y'all need to talk to us. Like, we need to know, like, the information that we're getting from the doctor's office is not enough for me. They're just handing me a pamphlet that don't mean anything to me. It don't have any cultural relevance to me. It doesn't show any significance for my community. I want to hear from you. Some women talked about the correlation between the start of the menstrual period and how when Indigenous women, they usually have a monarch ceremony for starting their menstrual period. And it was like, we should do a menopause ceremony. Let's have something for us. Other women felt fear at this age because they did not know what to expect. They know that there's these hormone changes. They know that they're going through a lot of changes in their body and don't know how to respond to it. But like I said, there was an invisibility of menopause recognition. Many women mentioned that they did not discuss menopause with their family or even other women in the community. They only knew about menopause when it started. And so quotes from the focus group is that my mother never talked about it, and I thought women her age were just crazy, or nuts, I'm sorry. I never talked about it with my mother or grandmother, and some women felt that don't talk about it because it's too personal. So what came out of the focus groups that's beyond my control? Talking circles, which I was so happy about. They, like I said, they wanted to do a menopausal ceremony. They want to also have this discussion across generations and sex about menopause and other health issues that affect women. They felt that Indian Health Services has a place to get involved, not only from the perspective of local, but also legislative and public policy to support women during their menopausal, or even just women's health in general for Indigenous women. And they wanted to continue to learn about medicinal plants for women's health. So I was just very honored to be in their presence and to take up a little bit of their space, but they felt that they got something out of the research as well. And so some of the highlights of the ethnobotany work is that when I was doing, literature search, trying to understand what's out there in the literature about how Indigenous women experience menopause, wasn't that much out there that exclusively on urban Indigenous women. Most women experience these symptoms, but they do not treat them. They have hot flashes, difficulty sleeping, and night sweats. Those are the typical top ones that they experience. But like I said, they felt like it was a natural process and they just had to get through. And one of the biggest things is that they didn't talk about it, but they wanted to change this by implementing talking circles in menopausal ceremonies. So are any of you familiar with talking circles? Okay, so talking circles is basically, and what I've learned in Indigenous culture is that it's a moment where people can talk, discuss problems, they can solve problems. It could be formal or informal, where one person can only talk at a time and holding a symbol, a symbolic instrument, such as like a feather or a stick, where nobody can interrupt that person and everybody has to listen. And then it get passed to the next speaker. And so one of the things that I think happened after I left from doing this work, there was some talking circles implemented around women's health. And so I'm very happy that that happened. Other lessons that I learned as a Black woman, I'm like, I experienced, or my mom experienced the same thing. My grandmother experienced the same thing. It's a lot of parallel. We don't talk about stuff that happens to us and also that we experience in our physical health. And when it comes to healthcare, most times Black and Indigenous women are not heard in the healthcare system. And also when I was working within the community, I had to like sit down and understand historical trauma. Why don't they know medicinal plants? Why aren't they talking about these health-related issues? How did this knowledge get lost? And I spent some time during my master's program at Northwestern, like to really figure out what laws were in place to strip the Indian and save the man as they did. I've learned about sovereignty and decolonization initiatives while doing this work. And I feel like it has a place in women's health issues. And also another factor that I've learned was addressing social and structural determinants of health. There's a lot of things going on in women's health issues that, you know, we try to bypass what's going on around us, and we need to look at that. And also, I remember working at one of the senior lunches, and this man that was at the senior lunch told me, I know you're working on medicinal plants, but we got some plants that we eat that are important. Have you tried looking at that? And so he opened my eyes to the three sisters, which is squash, corn, and beans. And so that was the first hint of plant-based dieting or incorporating plants into your diet that sparked an interest for me. And I was so glad to have that conversation with him. And then one of the things, you know, as a bench scientist, I'm always thinking about how can I make this specific for us, by us. And so one of the things that I'm interested in is also precision medicine and nutrition through metabolomics research. So all of these experiences cultivated my interest in plants, people, culture. That's the name of my lab. I just started it. So excited about my baby. Yes, I have 2 students and 1 research specialist who is working with me now. But how can we use plants, people, and culture to tackle some of these maternal health equity issues and cardiometabolic diseases that affect especially Black and Indigenous women? So I want to highlight that research in maternal health is very important. As some of you may know, there have been many initiatives that have been implemented in recent years to address maternal health inequities, including those for Black women. And one of the initiatives that I was very proud of that happened during, I believe, it started before COVID, but it got highlighted during one of the periods of lockdown, was that Black Maternal Health Week that was implemented on April 11th through the 17th. And in 2021, on April 13th, this initiative was supported by President Biden, which brought awareness to high maternal mortality rates of Black women. And our Vice President Kamala Harris led the charge on this initiative. So what I'm finding is that when it comes to women's health, especially in maternal health, women are not heard, they're ignored, they're overlooked. And so this cultivated my interest in using plants, people, and culture, to do my research. So I'm about to fly by this real quick because I still got a lot of slides. So big why. The biggest why is that Indigenous and Black women experience higher maternal mortality rates, 4 and 5 times higher than non-Hispanic whites. Let that sit in. That's huge. Now, one of the leading causes of maternal mortality for Black and Indigenous women, there are a lot of them, but one of them is hypertensive disorders of pregnancy. So I'm just getting your wheels turned to see why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I found one paper. I haven't found another yet. This paper was published by Bryan et al. In 2003. He did a study in the Washington state, and he had a good Indigenous population for this that showed that gestational diabetes significantly correlates with gestational hypertension for Black and Indigenous women compared to Black women who don't have gestational diabetes. So I thought, why are nobody talking about gestational diabetes? This is something that we can target that may be a preventative thing to prevent some of these issues. Gestational diabetes is usually having diabetes only or first diagnosed in pregnancy. You can't have it before pregnancy. First diagnosed during pregnancy is one of the most common pregnancy complications. It's associated with both short and long-term health effects for both mother and baby. So I have this picture here that looks like a cycle to me, because when I think about it, the data shows that if you have gestational diabetes, it's more likely that you're going to have cardiometabolic disease after gestational diabetes. You're more likely to have that, especially for Black women, it's 63%. You're going to have either type 2 diabetes or heart disease. For the baby, they're more likely to have it. So now we're building this generational disease pattern. And if I can stop it at the forefront and prevent GDM, hopefully by targeting GDM, I can prevent these cardiometabolic diseases in the future and also decrease maternal mortality and morbidity. Now that's a huge stretch, but this is how my mind working, and I'm hopeful for it. How do they treat gestational diabetes, or if you're at risk for gestational diabetes? And so being at risk meaning that you are from a non-white ethnicity, you are having a BMI that is considered by clinicians as obese or overweight, you have a history of type 2 diabetes in your family or gestational diabetes in your family. So one of the things that would happen is that you usually go under lifestyle modifications, which is diet, exercise, or even take medication if you have gestational diabetes. Here in Chicago, here at UIC, Black women are 20% or more of Black pregnant women that come to UIC for healthcare develop gestational diabetes. And like I said, it's an intergenerational cycle. And for Indigenous women, it is 2 times greater risk than non-Hispanic white women. So for me, one of the things that I would like to target is diet quality. Diet is a significant modifiable risk factor to target for decreasing GDM risk and also preventing gestational diabetes and their cardiometabolic consequences. And so how do I plan on doing that? That's where it comes with less preventing with Black and Indigenous women through the People, Plants, and Culture Lab. So my long-term goal is to implement innovative community and plant-based dietary interventions that effectively prevent perinatal cardiometabolic disease, such as gestational diabetes, and to understand the whys, not just from the pathology why, but also the social determinants why. And then to improve these social determinants by focusing on plants, people, and culture. So I'm working on an intervention right now. It's called DASH for Us. DASH is a diet that's shown to be very successful for preventing hypertension, especially in Black populations. Like I talked about, GDM affects Black pregnant women. It's associated with hypertensive disorders during pregnancy, and it also can lead to other cardiometabolic disease. But diet is key to try to prevent GDM or manage GDM. And the DASH diet is just a healthy dietary pattern with all these different food groups that I'm not going to go over, but eating healthier. It's a plant-based diet, and I'm working on a literature review now to look at how this plant-based diet, or most plant-based diets, would affect GDM risk and also manage GDM. But it has shown in one study to decrease GDM risk by 71%. And this was done in an Asian population, non-US Asian population. So some of the work that I'm doing to support DASH for Us, I am working with collaborators across pretty much all health sciences colleges. And if you want to collaborate with me, I am open to it. I'm very collaborative. One of my collaborators is Bea and Dr. Pauline Mackey. They have an ongoing study that looks at a lot of things. 5 minutes, thank you. That looks at mental health and well-being for mothers across the city. And one of that study is called Moment. What we did was that we just did a quick quantitative, semi-quantitative study to look at their data that they already collected. And I asked the questions, are there any associations with GDM risk factors, diet quality, and neighborhood social determinants? And what I found was that for Black women compared to white pregnant women, they had higher BMI, which is a risk factor for gestational diabetes. And then Black women compared to Hispanic Latino women, they lived in areas with higher SNAP enrollment, higher residents with diet-related diseases, higher dietary inflammatory index. So that's just like a diet quality score, and lower uninsurance rate. So our goal is to continue this work and to look at additional social determinants of health, and also look at the relationship between gut microbiome. Gut microbiome is heavily influenced by diet and also bile acids. We're also doing work with the College of Nursing and the College of Applied Health Science. We are recently working to submit a paper that look at food determinants, like how do Black women make their choices about food in relation to their health. And one of the things that we found is that food access, stress and family influence, and the need for nutrition education influence their nutritional determinants in their food choice. And a lot of this is rooted in food apartheid related issues. So we're hoping to get that published fairly soon. I'm working with Dr. Natasha Crooks in applied health science, in nursing, Dr. Mary Dawn Koenig, and also Lisa Toussaint Humphreys in applied health science. Other things that I'm working on is some systematic reviews to try to look at the literature to see if there's any correlation with plant-based diets and GDM, and also gut microbiome and GDM. And so hopefully, let's get to the intervention. What I've seen so far in the reviews is that they don't include Black people, they don't include Indigenous women, lack of clinical trials in the United States. And so that's my hope, is to do a clinical trial that incorporate gut microbiome research, as well as look at some of those social determinants of health and nutrition. So what is DASH for us? Goal is to have a 12-week intervention tailored with and for Black pregnant women. And then I'll move to Indigenous women because I need to build more capacity with these women and also who support these women during their perinatal period. It will look at the diet quality and also their markers for gestational diabetes, how I'm doing it. Right now, I'm in the very early stages. And when I say it's with and for Black women, I'm initiating a survey just to understand how do Black women make their food choice? How do they make decisions about what they eat? What is their nutritional environment? What is their maternal health, et cetera? And then I'll present these results to a community advisory board made of Black women who have had history with gestational diabetes, or who are working in organizations that support Black women during pregnancy. And so the community advisory board is really the individuals that will help me make this intervention. So I don't know what the intervention looks like yet, because they're going to help me make it. And then we'll take this intervention and put it in front of a focus group with women who would qualify for the study. And then they'll give us feedback, take it back to the community advisory board, and then we'll have a refined intervention that is made with Black women and for Black women. So here are my acknowledgements. I think I'm out of time, but y'all can read y'all names. I'm so blessed. I have a huge support system here at UIC. And I just want to say thank you. If you have any questions, I'm open to take them now. Sorry, I'm sweating bullets because it's hot up here. And my email is there if you want to send me an email. But thank you all.
It's working. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Any questions? And I know that we're taking questions also from people in the chat. So if any questions in person or in the chat, happy to take them now. I think we have one right here.
Thank you, Dr. Tristan. I very much enjoyed. It was very engaging. So thank you. I have tons of questions, but most likely I'll follow up via email.
Thank you.
But I just want to ask a couple of questions, actually, just based on the presentation. One is for the, can you give like a general overview of the native women, like a profile in terms of lifespan, the menopausal experience and how long they experience this,
I probably have to send you that in an email because it varied. Some women are postmenopausal, but they may or may not have symptoms after they reach like menopause. So menopause is like defined like the onset of not having your,
So you're fine, keep talking.
Oh.
I'm gonna turn off the screen share.
yeah, the onset of your menstrual cycle stopping. And so it's anytime after that. But postmenopausal is usually like a year after that. And so some women have talked about symptoms during like that perimenopausal phase, but also postmenopausal as well. And other women are like, I don't really have symptoms. So I would have to look into the data to give you more clear and succinct answers about when and how their symptoms change over time.
Yeah.
But I can definitely share that with you.
So the average age, I think from what I got it, is 47, right?
For this population,
For this population.
when their menstrual period stopped and they were in the menopausal phase.
Okay. So, and your sample was mostly in the Midwest, right? I'm just wondering if there's variation, if you observed any variation actually regionally.
No, well, I only had it in the Midwest, so mainly Chicago and then in Green Bay.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting to look at. So I think that's a great question to look at if there's differences with urban versus urban indigenous and individuals who actually live on tribal land. So I'm interested in that question too.
And
that was one of the things that I know. That was one of the things that they talked about, maybe even work with Indian Health Services to make a pamphlet about menopause for them, not like a general pamphlet like this is what menopause is. This is what menopause looks like for us as Indigenous women. Bring it back to have that pamphlet be engaging enough for them to take back and look at it and read it, and also making sure that healthcare providers ask targeted questions. They may not be asking the right questions where women could be like, oh yeah, I am affected by menopause, and this is how I'm affected by menopause. And I think menopause really, for some of the symptoms, they can affect your mental well-being, and that's not really talked about as well. And so targeting some of those questions when they're with healthcare providers on that specific notion about how women are actually doing, but also their regulation of rage came up several times. So regulation of their mood. No, you're good. I can.
Here, maybe you can try this one. I think this one's being a little bit difficult.
Okay.
Go ahead.
thank you.
Make sure our people online can hear us.
So I was wondering if you've explored literature of Latino women with American Indian, background, and if they have any plant intervention actually. And I said that for this reason because I was talking to a Hispanic friend recently, and she talked about gestational diabetes, experiencing that during pregnancy. She's actually in her 70s. And one thing she mentioned was that she used cactus pear.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it, but
she says, her doctor was going to put her on some medication. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, no, try this first. And she said it worked.
Okay, that's good because I have my undergraduate is looking into the plants right now for gestational diabetes. And so we can write that down as one of the plants of interest. And I think Tina was here. She's working with my undergraduate to do a literature review on medicinal plants that are safe first, because we want them to be safe and then effective.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking about Cuba, for instance. I mean, as you know, they have excellent, health outcomes there based on some unique practices, mostly, on preventive care. So that might be one area to explore, actually, see how women experience menopause there and what we can borrow.
Yeah.
Thank
you. These are some great questions.
Great. Thank you so much. We have a question here in the chat from Dr. Nadine Peacock, who says, great presentation. Do you see eventually expanding your intervention to postpartum women who experience gestational diabetes?
Yes. So that's like the 10-year go for me, just because I want to see if we can prevent it. But like you said, in postpartum, it's like, can we also do something that will decrease that risk of getting type 2 diabetes or heart disease, and also preventing it in future pregnancies. So yes, Dr. Peacock, that is definitely on my radar. That's more of like, and maybe even sooner, but that's like my 10-year thing, like look at preventing, then managing, and then dealing with post pregnancy.
Oh, hello. Okay. Sorry, the mics are being special today. A question I have, I know that there are some students here in the room and some students in the chat, and I really appreciate kind of how you ended your presentation, really bringing in your mentors, your community, your partners in all of this, which is so important to the work that you're doing. What tips do you have for students or anyone early career to really cultivate those relationships?
To me, it's like knowing one person that knew another person that knew another person, especially when you're doing community work, and also be active when you're doing community work, not just go because you have to go. Go because you want to go when times when they don't ask you to come, just show up, and also ask if they need anything. As far as the mentors, I feel that UIC as a community, I've had very great mentors who supported me on my research journey. And it was just asking. I remember sending cold emails to individuals like, hey, I like what you do. More formal. Hello, I'm this person and I'm doing this. I think what you're doing is interesting. Can I have a 15-minute chat? You know, I always start with a little amount of time because I know people's schedule are hectic. And you just have a chat with them and see if they can add you on their plate as far as having them as a mentor. And some may say, no, I don't have time right now. But usually when people say that, they'll try to connect you to a person that may have time or connect you to a person that may be of interest for you.
Thank you. And last question from Dr. Bethany Elkington.
Hey, Bethany.
Thank you. No. Hello. Okay, we're good. Who asks if you're having success with recruiting patients right now?
Who's having success? Anybody's doing recruitment? Like, that's always a struggle. I was so happy to go from 1 to 2. Like, just getting that second person was hard. Now I'm at 24 who have taken my online survey, I think as of today. And that was early in August. So I started early in August. One of the things that I feel that I'm doing now is to tag along on some other projects that are ongoing with maternal health. So we have a couple of projects at UIC that I am requesting to just like, if you have people that may qualify, ask them if they're interested in my study. And most people like to collaborate, and they said yes. And my reciprocity within that is that when I go to community events to recruit, I'll recruit for your study too. It's not, I'm not just doing this for me. We in this together. Like, we have serious questions about tackling maternal health issues for especially Black women and Indigenous women.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
I think with that, we are at time. So thank you again so much to the people online and to the people here in person for attending our first Odehmenan Health Equity Center speaker series talk. And please look out for an email from us. We're trying to collect data as much as we can to ensure that we keep these going. So it'll be completely anonymous, and we welcome any and all feedback, suggestions, and advice that you have. So thank you again so much for joining.
Thank you.